Hello there, Raven here. Welcome to my little pocket dimension in the void. I'm here to give you 7 things I wish I knew starting out as a VTuber, and what I kind of think you need to know going along the way. If you're new here, we are an entertainment channel focusing on the gaming, anime, and horror fandoms, and I stream here on YouTube as well as Twitch at twitch.tv/RavenTheBlackheart. Now, normally I wouldn't dip my toes into educational content, as I'm still only a few years into my content creation journey as it is. But this is something I haven't really seen coming from someone, at least from my perspective. The small, little streamer, not just the big time streamer. But no one's really kind of said anything as a small time instead of being medium tier. Like I feel like a lot of the other content is geared towards, or the very, very, very beginning tier. That in between point seems to be missing. Well, even as great as the potential for growth on YouTube is, it won't do the work for you. And that's where you have to come in. Now, here's where most videos gloss over the hard bit at the start. You know, the scary stuff that makes most of the streamers and content creators stop or give up at the get go. And trust me, there is a whole lot more that goes into getting started in streaming in general than just getting your model made, learning the programs, finding a niche, and hitting the live button. Sometimes you even have to create an entire new persona a few times to get something that works for you and that you could do genuinely. Let's get all Devin Nash and bust out the notepad. Number 1. Don't be afraid. Afraid to set boundaries. There we go. Being afraid to set boundaries is one of those things that might surprise and anger others, including people I know, but it's the truth. And the cold honest truth is that when you stream, or you are co hosting a video, or working with others, or even simply dealing with mods on your channel, and you have to not only be able to articulate your boundaries, but be willing to go to war over the results of them. That includes not doing things you're not comfortable with, and being willing to tell others involved no. Having the courage to fulfill the promise of no is what I mean by, if you say no, I'm not going to do this, but if you try to make me do this, I will do X, Y, and Z. You need to be willing to actually go through with doing X, Y, and Z in response. That might be something uncomfortable, like telling a longtime viewer that a comment wasn't okay, even if they play it off as a joke, or people on your team not fulfilling their ends of bargains. It's important for not only your own mental well being, but it's essential to be taken seriously in the long term. Slacking off on things like this early on will only train bad habits for the future that you can't really afford to have as mistakes. Don't be afraid to say no to things you don't want to do. Be willing to back up what you say, even it makes you uncomfortable. Set your standards on yourself above what makes you comfortable. By that I mean, just because you have a standard of yourself or you have an idea of what you're capable of, what you're willing to do, don't limit that to only what you're comfortable with. Don't be afraid to be uncomfortable, but don't do things that you genuinely don't want to do. Caveat of this not being comfortable will go into number 2. Do not rely on your friends slash family for help. This is another hot take. And it seems kind of harsh, but its harshness kind of protects you. Um, and it protects you from things that are even harsher. It's easy to think, hey, I have 2,000 people as friends on Facebook, and I'll just push my page and get likes. Easy. Well, yeah, it's a great idea to promote yourself. It's a good idea to promote yourself to whatever group you have access to, but you also have to remember that no one is required or beholden to you or your content. Okay? Just because they're your friends, just because they're your family, doesn't mean that they have to show up and watch your content. Is it nice? Is it helpful? Do you want people to be able to come watch you whenever you start? Yes. If at all possible, you should at least have 2 or 3 people watching you so you can show up on the leaderboard, on the broad register of Twitch a little bit easier. But that does not mean just because they are your friends and family that they are required to come watch you. It's not owed to you in any form, unless there was an agreement beforehand. Now, if you have like mods that agreed to watch your channel and your live or something like that, and they don't, that's a little different. You can get mad about that because there was actually some sort of feedback or discourse between the two of you that would state that that's one of the expected outcomes. But if it's not, you can't be mad about that. Most people, to be honest, most people do not care up to a certain point or after one. It's a double-edged sword. No one wants to pay attention to what you're doing while you're building it. But as soon as you have the foundations of the castle down and the moat dug up, they want to help play Knights of the Round Table. And that's just simply the nature of the beast. It's feast or famine. If you continue to push and grow, there will be a point where they want to participate en masse. But before that point, you'll be mostly standing alone. And that's where it gets you. And it's the ironic loneliness that comes with the territory of streaming. A lot of people talk about it. I've experienced it myself, even with 5, 10, 15 viewers, 20 viewers, doesn't matter. Without any support group or people that you know around, sometimes it can get really lonely and really depressing, even scary. Um, but it's also part of the weird landscape of streaming. Your brain isn't made to cope with how streaming works. It's not something that's normal. But that brings us to our number 3. As stated before in number 2, the loneliness that comes with streaming and especially VTubing is really weird to wrap your head around when you first start. In your mind, you're programmed to think that time and effort equals results. And with streaming, it almost does not matter how much time and effort you put into it. If no one's watching it. And with Twitch, at least, it's hard getting discovered, if not impossible, depending on the content or game you're streaming. Trying to compete with hundreds and at times thousands of other streamers, some better, some worse, for the same piece of pie in a game is stressful, and it can leave you feeling defeated quickly. And it's a real easy trap to get stuck in. I spent my first entire year streaming to an empty room, and even in an undersaturated game, because I was assuming that Twitch would bring me the viewers. But it's a lot more complicated than that. And even if you have a community, people have lives and aren't always going to pick you to watch, even if they're a fan of you, even if they're a sub. Some days are going to be bad, and some days are going to be good. Oops. Wow. Some days I can spell, some days I can't. But you have to be prepared for that. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, and sometimes it's really hard to get a community started. And speaking of community, that'll take us down to number 4. Learn to promote yourself and make your socials. I only just now started getting some momentum due to actually putting myself out there for once. You have to put yourself out there. And part of it was not letting the fear keep me from making a step towards making this work. I let excuses like not having people to back me up consistently or not knowing how to edit, etc., keep me from doing the things I needed to do to get myself out there. Things like posting my VODs to YouTube or actually making YouTube only content, learning how to use new programs, and making a LinkedIn profile, even. All of these things are things I was terrified of. And only in the last year made a Facebook for this brand. And only even started using it as something other than a link up now at the end of this year, in the last couple of months. And all of these things are contributing factors of why I'm not learning anything the way I should be and why I haven't had the growth I have the potential to have. Both as an individual and as a content creator, simply because I was too afraid to put myself out there. You won't grow if you are too afraid to put yourself out there. I shit you not. The very moment I started actively applying myself and putting myself out there into the world, things slowly started to shift for the better. I'm now noticing the things I need to start making changes within about to change my situation for the better. None of that would have happened if I never actually started to apply myself and promote myself in my own work. Even if it's bad, you can't ever hope to get better if you do not give yourself some breathing room to make the mistakes to learn from. There's no measure of growth without the failures you rack up to compare to the victories to. And it's only something you can do for yourself, and no one can do it for you regardless of what they say you can. Yes, there are promoters and marketers and all that, but they still work with you to find your voice. Uh, it all comes down to you having to know what you want. And you have to know where you are to know that. And part of that comes from being willing to admit mistakes and be brave enough to make changes. No one likes to admit they're wrong. Myself more than most people at times, but it's important to be able to let go of the burden of expectation sometimes. Just because a stream didn't go as planned, or you said some shit you'd meant as a joke but came out meaner than expected, you have to remember that you're a human and you make mistakes. But you also have to remember that people are also entitled to have their own boundaries and emotions too. Uh, their own. Being happy. I mean, having the happy real estate isn't monopolized by you alone. You have to remember that while you might be the main character in your own story, they are theirs in their own. And you have to be mature enough to understand that no one is required to forgive you. And your apology should not be under the condition they do. It should be more. It should be more than just you're sorry because you want them to forgive you to move on and be things are fine. If you do things that are wrong, you need to be willing to own up to it and actually make the attempt to change that. And it should make your apology sincere, regardless of what happens afterwards, even if they don't want to hang out or even if they don't want to talk, etc., etc., etc. You have to understand that being really honest with yourself internally on the things you screw up can help you do so much more than you are now able to do, in more ways than you would possibly believe. You have to have the fortitude to own up internally, not just to the outside things you do wrong, but actually put effort into making yourself better for the sake of being better and not for just some moral social credit score. Karma is real, but you shouldn't be the reason why you're a good person. The sixth thing I wish I knew is that I should be a good student, not a blind master. There's something new to learn every day, and that's not just some dumb cliche saying that with no tangible meaning. It's a near universal law at this point. No matter your aptitude for any given skill, task, or field, there's always a way to improve or optimize a routine. Look at your peers. They're not really competition. No one can be you but you. But the things that they do that work are the things that you should find ways of implementing on your own, making them tools in your tool belt of skill sets. Now, that doesn't mean rip them off, but if it isn't broke, don't try and fix it. You don't have to reinvent the shoe every time you want to go on a walk. Just get some that fit and move on. If there's a trend you can put into some content in some way and make it personal, you really need to do it. Everyone is doing it for a reason, and that's why it's trending in the first place. Now, it does not mean you need to, or even should, jump on every bandwagon that pops up to stay cool. However, it does mean that you should always be willing to learn new ways to approach what you do. And you should always be willing to adapt to things as they start up as roadblocks to overcome. There's always a way to make yourself better. And my personal motto is always to attempt to do it 1% better the next time. Because if you think about it, if nothing else, if you attempt to make 1% difference in the better for everything you make, if you do that 100 times, by the end of that, if you've made a 1% change for the better every time, you've made a 100% better change than from when you started. And that's progress. And even if you don't make it at 100, maybe you say 50, that's still 50% better. That's still better than when you started. That's still more than when you began. So I think it's a good thing to keep in mind that you're never going to stop growing. And you shouldn't just blindly accept that you're as good as you're going to get at what you're doing. Because there's always a way to make it better. Be genuine. The most important thing. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it's true. And I know I just said that you want to learn from others and add that to your toolkit. But you have to find a way to do that in your own way, or no one's going to take it seriously. I mean what I said in number six, but to really make it work, you have to put a twist on things that is entirely your own, even if it's in a lot of ways similar to others. The idea isn't original, but the implementation of it can be. And no one is better at being you than you, so you have to remember that you are in control of your life and no one else's. So don't live it in someone else's shadow, but at least try to stay in a path that follows what you like. It's scary at the start, and it's really easy to let others tell you what to do and how to do it. At the end of the day, the one that has to deal with the consequences of the decisions you make are you and you alone. And the more you can keep things genuine, the easier the transition and the things that you want to do will be, because it will be natural. The more genuine you are, more natural you are. More genuine and natural your transition to you will be. By you, I mean who you will become as a content creator. Now, having said all that, I am not an expert by any means. But if what little bit I've learned in the last few years has taught me anything, it's that the only one that can make you get up and do this is you. No one is going to make you hit the go live button but you. You need to take into the account the things that you're doing wrong. But just as importantly, you need to consider the things that you're doing right as well. I don't know if you've noticed that I didn't tell you, oh, you need to do this, use this OBS software, and do this type of thing. And you need to only get this kind of model in. You can only do things if it's from this. None of that stuff's really applicable. And that's the same trap everyone else starts it off at. And besides, I'm not some guru. I'm not someone with a big giant following. I'm also a small time streamer and content creator. And I'm trying to give you that perspective as someone that's in that part of this journey. If you've made it this long, comment below meow like a cat and what you would add to this list. Or what are some things that you've encountered you didn't think when starting this adventure, or no one told you yet? And what are some things you'd like to know about VTubing if this is where you're just now starting? If you enjoyed this, please feel free to give us a like as it really does help us grow. And come back to see us again sometime. I'll be sure to put links in the for the Discord, Twitch, and Facebook page. And until next time, be good or be good at it. Peace.